Welcome to Fathernetics, Fatherhood Unfiltered. I'm Jamil. Welcome to the podcast.
You can never find somebody do it like me. I'ma turn it all the way up, cause it kamikaze. Go ahead and try, baby, you are gonna see that you'll never.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. This week we have another special guest joining us to give us perspective on fatherhood from the cisgendered straight perspective, but also familiar and aligned to the LGBTQ community as an ally. Is one of my closest friends, Anthony. Anthony, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and then we'll get into it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamil. Appreciate it. I also appreciate the invitation here too. Jamil, you and I have known each other, 3 or 4 years, something like that.
Has it been that long?
I don't know. Has it? It's hard to tell. So we knew each other in a professional setting before we kind of went our separate ways from that organization and have developed a really strong personal relationship. So I really like being here, and I appreciate you inviting me.
So tell us about your family dynamic for those of us listening.
Sure. My family dynamic right now or growing up?
Just right now, just for introduction purposes.
Sure. Yeah. So I live in Columbus, Ohio with my wife, Sophia. We have one daughter. She is 4.5 years old, and her name is Peyton. She's actually homesick right now. So if you happen to hear her in the background, that's why.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think that is probably a different podcast, but I'd love to kind of dig into, the health and science of today's world and dealing with kids, especially seeing how some of our health and science is being impacted at a government level. But I think from just a general parent perspective, right, we're all kind of revisiting our sick levels. We're all getting sick with our kids. They're all coming home with some sort of something that as an adult I haven't had in years, and now we're getting it. I just heard from one of my son's friends, his friend got scarlet fever, and I had to look it up because I'm like, what is that? And is it something I can get? Measles is something that's breaking out now in some of the parts of the country, and things like pink eye, and I'm excited to continue to go through all of these journeys with my son. But with that said, yes, I do appreciate you being on the podcast today. I guess one of the preliminary questions that I always ask everyone that joins our podcast is, where do you think that you get the influence that you have in your life today to start your journey as a dad?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it's kind of instinctual. Just for transparency purposes, I never wanted to be a dad until we had that conversation. I had mapped my entire life out when I was younger, never getting married, never having a kid. It just didn't seem like it was for me. And, things change. And even after proposing to my wife and planning a wedding, we had a 2-year engagement to kind of take the pressure off a little bit. We were still aligned that we were going to travel. We were just going to be, what do they call them? Dinks, double income, no kids.
Dinks. I've never.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. So throughout the wedding preparations, somebody, not me, changed their mind about wanting kids, and it had a lot to do with my wife's brother having a little girl who was just adorable, and I think she really got to experience that sort of familial love of something so teeny tiny firsthand. And no doubt, I enjoyed it very much as well, but it was still pretty determined just to be like a 2-person team. And then it kind of got to that point where we had a conversation about, where we are now, what we've done, how, all the things that we've done in the time that we've known each other. And we collectively did decide to start a family. I think initially the goal was only to have one kid, and thankfully that is kind of where we are now. So we're going all in on our daughter. But in terms of, how I kind of molded my perception of fatherhood and what I wanted to do, I think it's taking a little of column A and column B of my parents' best assets. Things like, my mom who I really grew up with. My parents divorced when I was in eighth grade, so my mom had sole custody there. My dad's a great guy, but he just moved to a different state. So there's a lot that I learned from my mom from a respect perspective, and she's a very smart woman. And even things that they did when I was a kid, like always taking me with them when it was going to their adult friends' houses or out to the mall. Like I think I really that helped to develop my vocabulary at a young age because I was just around adults having conversations, and it wasn't so much of the goo goo gaga baby talk. And I think that really helped me later in life. My dad was a really interesting guy too. He was a white collar guy with a blue collar attitude from Pittsburgh. So like I learned things about music and sports from my dad, and more like the life lessons from my mom. So I just took what I thought was best in each of them as an individual and tried to use that as a starting point for fatherhood, I guess. And I mean, a lot of it I'm still figuring out, and I think nowadays with so many resources out there, it can really muddy the waters a little bit because, every blog or friend or family member you talk to's got different advice or opinions, and some of them may gel with your, I don't know, parental morals, and some may not. So it's tough. I mean, it's a lot of just brailing our way through.
So let me ask you this, because one of the things that we try to promote here on Fathernetics is the fact that fatherhood is more of a role, and it's not necessarily assigned to male or female or anyone who's non-gendered. So I think there are a lot of components for engaging or learning how to be a father that we get from our mothers as well, because they can also don the role of fatherhood, especially single moms raising kids in the home. So it sounds like what I'm hearing is there's a slice, right, of that fatherhood component that you derive from both mom and dad. With the sense of community that you've mentioned, do you feel that that level of importance was imbued on you from an early age, or is that something that you've kind of become accustomed to or grew into on your own?
I've always liked the idea of community relationship, even as silly as it may sound. Like I drive a Jeep, so even little Jeep waves, like it's just fun. It's our little
I drive a
thing.
Jeep
So
too.
I know you
I
do.
have
Um,
a what is it, a glove box full of duckies that I've just kind of restocked on, I think where you're going in the sense of community, I have my kid that loves to do it now, so now he's seeing Jeeps, he's like, let's go put a duck on that one. So I think something nuanced like that, even for kids, brings us all a little
oh,
bit closer. But carry on in
definitely.
your
I
sense of
mean,
community, go ahead.
yeah, I mean things like sports, and when I was in college, I did the fraternity thing. Like I always was the kind of guy that would rather have 10 or 20 best friends than 100 acquaintances. So like I kind of went all in on building relationships with the people around me that I cared for and respected the most. I mean, there are some, peripheral folks and some friend adjacent people that are still kind of around the orbit, but for the most part, I think I have a pretty good sense of who I want to be in my life, because if they're in my life, they're going to be in my daughter's life and my wife's, et cetera. So I don't know. I get that's instinctual too, I suppose, just because my friend group is personality wise, race, creed, they're so diverse. And no one particular thing that kind of drew me to these people. It's just, instinctual, intangible, if you will.
So when we're talking about diversity, I see a lot of people in the world who kind of gravitate towards their own tribes, if you will, right? You see a lot of black people just hang out with black people. You see a lot of white people just hang out with white people. Um, for both of us, I think it's true that we have such a diverse tapestry of friends that come from all walks of life, including LGBTQ or different races, different backgrounds. How do you kind of instill that type of dynamic into a child that you are raising, that diversity is important, not just in the friendships that you have, but in the way that you communicate, in the way that you create ideas, in the way that you interact with the world?
Yeah, so a lot of it's just, I guess, organic exposure. So in my neighborhood specifically, I would say, and I'm just throwing out numbers, I guess, educated guess, maybe 40% Caucasian, and the rest is generally Indian. Um, and I mean, my daughter has so many friends in the neighborhood, and it's not her Indian friend Sasha or her black friend Audrey. It's just her friends. And that's just how they're referred to. I mean, to us, a friend is a friend is a friend. It makes no difference to us or to Peyton, and she doesn't see that stuff. So that really kind of reinforces, I think, the nature versus nurture component of diversity there. I think a lot of it is learned behavior. And when she sees us hanging out with a diverse group of people, and that she hangs out with a diverse group of people, I think that's only going to do her, and I think, obviously the friends and families of the other folks that service moving forward. They don't hang out in daycare and talk about who their black friends are. They just talk about who their friends are and who they want to play house with. So
So
I
so
just think it's
valid
about it.
point. I
It's just
think
like exposing.
I think that nurture versus nature is key. It plays a big role in how we raise our kids. What you said about kids not really thinking about that, I think that from my perspective, all of our kids learn how to be racist or not to be racist, or how to be homophobic, not to be homophobic, based on their parents and how they are exposed or the lack of exposure that they receive. Therefore, they're now learning these things from a third party or from TV or from social media. So I think that what you're doing with your child in making sure that they're exposed without saying you're exposed, right? The world would be better off if we all took those steps. If we all took the steps of saying, "Hey, we're all the same." We may think and look different, but we're all the same. We're all looking for the same goals in life: happiness, love, um, friendships, and loyalty, and all these things that are not unique to any one race or individual. I think what makes us unique is how we engage with the world and the things that we can bring with us to improve the world. So as an LGBTQ couple, my husband and I and our son, one of the things that we talk about is morality and how we infuse that in our kids. And that's a daily kind of a thing. I explain a lot about how my husband and I are really kind of role models to the kids that come into our home, whether we want to or not. Everybody's a role model, right? We're showing all the kids that come into our home how a gay couple interacts with them and how we're not to be feared as much of the media, makes us out to be, for one reason or another, right? Especially in the world of Donald Trump, where whatever he says tends to resonate with, 48% of the country. I think we're now fighting a battle of identity and of minds, if you will, to make sure that they're kind of understanding that. So, along those lines, as a dad, where do you see yourself kind of imparting that, not just to your kids, but perhaps the people, maybe even the adults that you engage with, when it comes to morality in life? I know that's a big
So
question, but
well, yeah, so it's a big question, but I'm kind of going to go back to just exposure for 1 second, because you had talked about, I mean, just now, about inviting people into your home and realizing that there's going to be fear. It's just it's a regular healthy couple, raising a kid. No different, for lack of a better term. Now, like, I was exposed to a tremendous amount of LGBTQ folks growing up because my dad was in an industry that is predominantly within that community. He was in fashion. I mean, my house was filled with husbands and wives
your
of
dad's Oscar
say,
de la Renta. Is that what we're
yeah,
saying?
yes, yeah. Uh, but it was really cool, because that's what made me the ally that I am today, is because I grew up with these people. And I mean, there's just, when you grow up around the thing that other people fear, and you know that it's just the people being people, it just makes you, I guess I'm just going to toot my own horn and just say, I think it just makes you a better person. Um, I read the Polar Express to my daughter all the time, and it's signed in there from my mom's best friend Tyson, who is a gay man, and it's dated 1989. So, like, I still think about Tyson, handful of times a month, because he gave me that book in the 80s. Now I read it to my daughter. Um, and I just think those relationships really pay dividends if you just kind of invest in them. And just going back to your question just now, can you do me a quick favor and just repeat it, just so I can make sure I'm answering?
No, I can't because that was right off the top of my head.
um,
Well,
okay.
let me try here.
Oh yeah.
So, from a moral perspective, I guess this is more of questions about how you've become the dad that you are today. Do you think that some of the moral tenets that you hold dear to your life, how has that come in from mom or dad? Are these again observational therapy, right? Is this something that you've just seen and you've kind of pulled that in, or have you made decisions as a teen, a young adult, or maybe before coming into dadhood, or maybe even after, to say, this is something that I am going to do on purpose to make sure that I am producing or at least supporting a human being that will be effective in the world?
Yeah. So I mean, it may sound pedestrian or silly to some parents, but I make sure that not a day goes by where I don't tell my daughter how she's funny and she's smart, how much I love her, that she's beautiful. But I try not to make that the primary compliment. I don't want her getting a complex. But just really making sure that someday when I'm gone, like she'll never have to tell a friend or God forbid a therapist that, dad never hugged me or said that or never said they love me. I mean, I may be actually laying it on a bit too thick. Um, but that's something that's important to me because she's our only one. So I want her to make sure that she knows that she is mom and dad's world. Granted, 4 and 5, it's a little bit easier to coddle them because while they are more independent than she was, a year and a half ago, she still requires you know a good deal of effort to kind of function throughout the day. And she's going through these crazy phases, and whoever said the terrible twos just like the way it sounded because two was a dream, 3 and 4 has been a nightmare, but she's still wonderful. And I think that just kind of goes to show how we feel about our daughter. I mean, she is a toot on her, man.
So let's talk about that a little bit when we talking about kids, because we're both dads, right? And these are things that we deal with on a regular basis. For my son, one of my biggest concerns is the school component. What is he learning there? How can we support that? For example, sex is something that's going to be coming up pretty soon. We've already had the conversation with him, the birds and the bees. We got into all the little nuanced details. It's all about perspective, in my opinion, when you're having these conversations, because they are uncomfortable conversations to have with your 11-year-old. Inevitably, there's a question of, how do you do things, and it's like, ooh, this is not about us. Let me stick to the science of this, right? Exactly. So, the importance of that to me, as uncomfortable as that conversation is, I want to make sure that, just like with sex or race or politics, which these kids at 11-year-old are talking about, or how they engage with their teacher or their principals or the bully on the playground, I want to make sure that they are armed with enough information to be able to speak at least halfway decent about some of these topics. I don't want a gap to exist for their friends to fill it in. When we hesitate, in my opinion, to speak about certain topics like sex, it leaves their other 11-year-old friends to fill that gap. They don't
Yeah.
know what they're talking about. So now they turn up one day with such a misaligned understanding that it causes issues. Same thing with politics, same thing with heterosexual or homophobic um heterosexual homosexual type of topics, which are generally considered taboo in certain spaces. But why do you have two dads? Well, let's have that conversation at home so that when someone asks you that question, you know how to respond and not be ashamed of it. So I guess my question to you, more so on things that your child may be dealing with at her age, being, perhaps she's being bullied, or maybe, beauty, as you mentioned, is a topic. We don't want to create a situation where beauty is a focal point. How are you consciously trying to recognize and deal with that from a father's perspective?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think at 4 and 1/2, I'm far less concerned about what they're learning in school. But I am very concerned about the social aspect, especially being an only child. I think I'm a bit unique in the way I was raised. I don't know. I was okay putting myself out there. So I always had friends. I had a lot of friends. I was never lonely or anything growing up or into my adolescence or adulthood. And I still have a really, really solid group of friends across many states. But that's because I was comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, at 4-year old, they're uncomfortable doing everything. So um, we are starting to see little cliques form in her school, which is a shame because the people that are drifting away from my daughter, I really like their parents. So it would make things a lot easier if they were friends with their kids. But when we talk to our daughter's teachers, they even say that this group of girls is feral. I mean, they are crazy. Like you talk about beauty. If my daughter were to go to school wearing jeans, all the other girls are in princess dresses, and they would tell, jeans are for boys, and you're not pretty unless you're wearing a princess dress. And that has ruined my life because now she's still in a princess dress. She's outside picking up rocks in the flower bed, and she's wearing a blue Elsa
So
dress.
where do you think
So
that comes from? Where do you think that mindset from the other kids comes from? In my head, I don't have a daughter, so it's hard for me to say or to even think that the parents would be the source of don't wear jeans, or are they? Do you think it's just the absence of jeans is indicative of it not being for girls at their age?
it's probably, yeah, probably the latter. Because I'm sure it's not their parents. I mean, I couldn't imagine any self-respecting parents saying that. But I also think it comes down to maybe siblings too. I think some of these
Mm.
girls have older brothers and older sisters, to varying degrees of age gaps there, and my kid doesn't. So that's why we try to expose her to as many people and friends as possible so she can kind of fill in that void that may exist for not having a brother or a sister. Yeah, but in terms of where that attitude comes from, I'm not entirely sure. So like I play guitar, for example, and I've had a guitar for about 30 years. It's downstairs, and it is beaten up. It's so, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, every little chip and crack there is a different story. And I show it to my daughter, like, see, this is not broken. It's beautiful. I mean, broken is beautiful. It's okay. And I mean, if she drops her popsicle and it breaks in half, she get another popsicle because she thinks that popsicle doesn't work anymore. I'm like, no, now you just have two. So I don't know. It's just maybe it's just perception. So the critical thinking, I guess.
So with this evolution, how do you think you've changed as a dad since you've had a kid from not having one, obviously? And now for a brief break. I'll be honest, writing Paper Cradles didn't feel deep at first. It felt familiar, lived in, like I was finally putting words to all the side conversations, the funny moments, the awkward ones too. Not just adoption stuff, but parenting stuff, real life stuff. Because being a dad comes with 1,000 decisions no one trains you for. And somehow, that becomes the heartbeat of this book. It's heartfelt, yeah, but it also has humor, sarcasm, and a few moments where I just let it all out. Paper Cradles is out now. Come hang out on Instagram at JMaris Publishing or here at Fathernetics. I promise we keep it real. And now back to the show.
Uh, I thought that I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be emotionally taxing, and it is. I mean, it's just, it like hurts how much I love this kid. And that's when I hear stuff like, she says so and so won't play with me at school. It just breaks my heart because I'm like, why wouldn't they want to? You're the best. Um, but I don't really, I don't know. It's hard letting go too. And I think that being a dad has really taught me to be okay making mistakes because there have been times like, I think when everyone is even tempered and is thinking critically, you say, well, we're never going to yell at our kid. Of course not. I mean, we're never going to spank, which we don't. I wish I never yelled at her, but I certainly have. And it's one of those things about trying to forgive yourself. Like, yeah, she's a person too, so I can't, hold a grudge when she throws an hour-long tantrum, and I should hope that she doesn't hold a grudge when I raise my voice at her for, well, hitting the TV with a broomstick on accident or something. So, being okay stumbling, I think, is one of those things that I learned on top of patience. I always thought I was patient. I wasn't.
You know,
Now I
that's a
am.
number one that I hear across the board for parents. I feel the same way. I thought I was patient patient, if you will. And I think there's like, it's like a building block, right? There's block A that goes on top of block B that goes on top of block C.
Mhm.
I didn't realize there was something before block A that I was missing when it came to patience level. And I still haven't mastered it, quite honestly. But yeah, forget patience. That's not a thing for me.
Yeah, it's also about co-parenting. Like, luckily, my wife and I have very similar morals. So, like, yeah, it's not like we're sitting at the dinner table debating on whether we spank or not. We just agreed that's just not what we're gonna do. But also knowing when to come in and support her. If my daughter is throwing a fit and she goes to swipe at her or something, I'll step in. Just say, you don't hurt my wife like that. You don't hurt your mom like that, and we don't hit you, so you don't hit us. And it's really trying to draw those connections about, I mean, a 4-year-old is just being flooded with emotions and their body just reacts, I guess. They don't have or lack the I guess the experience to be like, okay, I'm feeling this way. I'm just gonna take a breath. Even though we practice it, what are some things you can do? You can count, you can sing, you can take a breath. None of those things happen. I mean, we try to instill that, but inevitably she's just gonna start kicking.
Coping
Or, like,
skills.
lay on the yeah, she'll, inevitably she'll lay on the ground, just do the thing where she kicks her heels into the floor, and you can hear it from any room in the house.
What I will say to that is as my kid's 11, so those coping skills that you are correctly teaching your kid, it's sticking. You may feel like it's not working, but you know when they get to be 9 and all of a sudden they do it, you're gonna be like, "Whoa, wait a minute, where'd that come from? When did you start doing that?" Because we see some of it. We've been working on coping skills. It seems like forever, since day one, and then every now and again, we'll see our son in the corner, doing the deep breaths and the trying to zen out because he's upset that he lost something that. So it's like we look at that and we go, oh, okay, and we take that opportunity to reward, right? That thing we were going to take away, we say, forget about it. You can have it because you did that one thing that we've been trying to do for 38 years. Um, so I say to that, I say, don't give up. One of my questions was going to be, as a co-parenting type individual, how did you and your lovely wife get to the point where you're kind of aligned on how to co-parent in those tough moments? Because I think whether you're straight or gay or anywhere on the spectrum, raising a kid in this manner is is certainly a skill to learn.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to some of those uncomfortable conversations that you were talking about, because uncomfortable conversations, I mean, they know no bounds. It can be with your wife, it can be with a friend, family member, kid, whatever. There may be things that she's seen me do or things that she does that maybe I didn't agree with in the moment. And I think the key there is to just kind of holster it until you can have a conversation. And generally those issues arise when it's high tension. If there's some sort of, work is hard, and then maybe the daughter's throwing a fit, and then I just got bad news, and all of a sudden you have three people who are just overstimulated and just highly, just highly emotional. So waiting for the emotions to kind of subside and having that conversation is good. One thing that we are very cognizant of is to have healthy conflict in front of her. So we will talk about things that we don't agree with, but we don't raise our voice. We don't call names, obviously. We'll say, like, I didn't appreciate X, Y, and Z. And then, I'm sorry, she or I will say, well, X, Y, and Z happened because of one, two, and three. And our daughter will be there. It's just something that we want to make sure that as much as we want to see, as much as we want her to see us being, like a loving couple, we also want her to see that, it's not always great, but it's never irrational.
No, I think that's phenomenal. Me growing
I'm
up.
always right too. It makes a difference.
Oh, ooh, I'm gonna cut that out later. I think me for myself growing out, I didn't see my parents argue a lot. But I did learn that arguments, and disagreements are handled in a very calm and mature way. I knew that to be the case just based on how they interacted. They were never like the screaming, shouting kind of parents, and I'm grateful for that because that may have pulled me in a different direction. But same thing that Nicholas and I do, right? We have these conversations in front of our kid or in earshot of our kid. We're never shying away from that because, to your point, it's important for them to learn how we're resolving these issues. That same coping skill that we're trying to tell you you need to use, we're using it too. It's not a kid thing, it's an adult thing as well. It's just we're adults now. We've modified it, we've adjusted it. We internalize the coping skills so it's not as visible as we're trying to make it with our kids because we want to see that you're doing something. When you turn 15, you can change that and modify that any way you want. So I think that's good advice and a good practice to make sure to personify that, if you will, in front of your kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like if she only sees the good stuff, whenever she has conflict with one of her friends, it's going to seem like the end of the world. I mean, she already comes home and she'll say, Cammy said I can't have a birthday this year. I'm like, I promise you can have a birthday. Don't listen to Cammy.
Who's this Cammy kid? Let's no, I'm just kidding.
Well, whatever.
They just take everything for yeah, and at your kid's age, which Jacob hasn't been in quite some time. It just seems like anything is like fair game.
Oh, everything's at face value too. There's no nuance or complexity. It's all very much, this is how I feel, and I'm going to tell you.
No. So what do you do with or let me rephrase the question. One of the things that we do actively on our side is to make sure that the conversations that our kids are either a part of or can hear are always geared in a way that supports, our morals or our definition of healthy conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to do anything with being right or wrong, right? We have political conversations around our kids talking about the differences between A, B, and C. We are fans of Democrats. We are fans of Republicans. We are not fans of Donald Trump, and that is very clear in our house. But we are also teaching our kid that just because you don't like Donald Trump and your friend is saying they love Donald Trump, that's not a reason to be mean to them, be a bully to them, talk down to them. Those are certainly opportunities to have conversations about the values of the points with, he's 11 years old. Can he really do that accurately? No, he's just regurgitating what he's hearing from us. And so are his friends. But
most adults are just doing that too.
Exactly. Well, that's where the kids are getting it from, right? My dad doesn't like or hates Biden and loves Trump. So I'm telling you, you're wrong. Oh, okay, 11-year-old. It's like, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to sacrifice you just because you said it. We know where you're getting it from. But it also gives us an opportunity to say, we need to guide our son into or away from certain conversations that I think at any age they really soak it up. They're hearing it from around the corner and they're really soaking it up and taking it with them. So what advice would you give any parent, especially a newer parent, LGBTQ or otherwise, about the type of environment and friends to keep or to lose when you have kids? Because perspectives change.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just one of those things like you had said, you're a fan of Republicans, but not of Donald Trump, which makes sense. I mean, those things are mutually exclusive. So um, it's really just going to be a matter of context, I think. So, if she in a few years were to come home and say, she feels XYZ away or XYZ way about, the Ukrainian war, we're like, okay, why do you think that? Or, if she comes home and she's like,
Well, I hope the war is
whoever,
still not going on in 5 years.
yeah, well, we can all hope. Yeah. Who knows? We're living in a simulation. Who knows? But if she were to come home and say this candidate is great and the other one is terrible, well, why? Okay, well, I'm sure you're just parroting what some of your friends said at school. It's just going to be, I mean, I think you're really going to get a feel for who these kids are going to be as they get a little bit older. I mean, I think now there's such a blank canvas and so spongy cognitively, their own opinions are pretty much, at least my daughter's friends are pretty much contained to the shows they like and the movies they like and do they like Taylor Swift or not. I mean, there's only two groups there. So, I think that friend group is going to slowly kind of focus in on the need to have people in her life, and some of the nice to have people in her life are going to just kind of fall off. But, should we get to that point again, it's just about it's exposure, honesty, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and, being able to voice all opinions in this house are heard. You don't have to agree with them, but they are heard. So she comes home and says she feels a certain way. I'll hear her out. I mean, as long as there's respect involved, I have no qualms with that. And we also allow a lot of flexibility too. So we don't necessarily push anything on her too hard. I mean, there's some like moral pillars and life stuff that we're very serious about. But things like, for instance, my wife grew up in a very religious household. Very. Her dad was the deacon of a church. They all went to school. I mean, they are in it.
PK
I
kid.
wasn't. Yeah. I mean, I was not raised in that environment whatsoever. It wasn't anti that environment. It was just like, no thanks. But, I'm going to give my daughter that choice. Does she want to go to church every Sunday? Does she want to be super religious? Go for it. If it's not for you, then it's not for you. And I take no issues with that. I'd feel the same way if she told us that she was gay one. I mean, it makes no difference at all. And I want her to know that she's comfortable with any of those decisions that she makes that are respectful and within reason. If she says that she wants to go join a cult, different story. But if she says that, he's a staunch Republican all of a sudden, I'd be like, not sure where that happened, but okay, let's talk about it.
So why would you stop her from joining a cult if you're very open and being very devil's advocate here? If you're very open to everything else, what would make the difference between religion and a cult, which a lot of people see as being synonymous?
Ooh, a lot of people do look at that as being synonymous. I guess it would depend. It's case by case, I suppose. If she wants to go in the middle of the desert and live in a house with 200 people, what was that? Was that Waco? I don't know. Again, case by case. I'd still probably not be cool with it. Maybe I'm just being a hypocrite, but I don't know if I'd be cool with
Yeah,
it.
well, I think it brings up a good point, just kind of generally speaking, right? There are a lot of things that we've grown up saying not for us, and then there are a lot of things we've grown up knowing that this is absolutely wrong. And I think that it comes down to, again, having a conversation about the merits of that item as opposed to the idea, right? I just using the cult example, a cult in itself, may have some benefits, right? It has a community, it has that self sustainability, it has that love that a lot of people are attracted to. But let's talk about why, some of it might not be for you. Sometimes it's very isolationist. Sometimes it pulls you out of the world. Sometimes it forces you to surrender control to one individual. So I think those are all the points that I would bring up as opposed to cult is bad. Sorry. But I think one of the things that you do and Nicholas and I do and Sophia as well do is open things up to conversations so that kids can come to their own conclusions. And based on the moral foundations that we're giving them now, they hopefully will come to the right conclusions. Because at the end of the day, if they're 18, 19, 20, and they say, I want to go join a cult, there's nothing you can do about it, right? They're going to go do it. Okay, yeah, we're going to stress about it. We're going to try our hardest to shine light and bring logic and others. But if you didn't take the time to make that a conversational piece, or at least allow yourself as a parent to be vulnerable enough to say whatever issue you're having or thinking, let's talk about it. Let's find out what the merits are. Let's find out what the negatives are. Why do you want to do that? Are you missing something in your life that you're trying to get? I think that allows for us to be less hammer in a china shop and more
Yeah.
surgical with our approach. And that's the advice that I would give anyone, especially in the LGBTQ community, when, as an adult, which is my story, I came out to my parents, right? So it's very different than coming out as a child. And one of their first reactions is, where did I go wrong? What did I miss? Did I know this was happening? And one of the questions that I would ask is, had you known earlier, what would you have done differently? If this is who I am, there's nothing you could do to have changed that, knowing anything or seeing the signs. But that's more of an introspective look for them than it is an opportunity for them to have impacted some sort of change earlier.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those hindsight's always 2020.
Yep, yep, yep. So one of my last questions here is, I think a lot of people deal with this as well, a lot of straight individuals. If your kid comes to you and says, I am gay or I am lesbian or I am transgendered, what do you say to that? What is that? What does the initial conversation look like? Because we know it's not just one conversation; it's many. But what does that look like?
Yeah, so Sophia and I talked about this actually many times. Just I really the way it would play on my head is she would feel comfortable telling us because we do have a very open home and we share our opinions and we talk very openly but respectfully. It would just be she gets a hug. She said this. I would say this changes absolutely nothing, and it would. I wouldn't even. I would in. I hope this comes out in as positive of a way as I intended to. I still think it would change anything. I would make sure that it's just another day and say thank you for letting us know and feeling safe enough to tell us this changes absolutely nothing. When do we get to meet her?
And I think that there's a phrase that you used in there, safe enough to tell us. And I think that that is the foundational work that we all should be building, right? It's all in the things that we do. It's all in the nuanced things that we do. It's the comments that we make when gay characters show up on TV. It's the opportunity to do what you do. You paint your nails. You wear a wig. You dress up with your kid. You know, she wants to be a princess with her princess friends. Okay, we're going to put on a dress. None of that makes you gay. What it does is it makes you an interactive father. And I think that that is a level of emotional intelligence that we can all benefit from.
Yeah, so I mean, I've answered the door about a half dozen times when it like if I'm just home with my daughter with like blue clip-on dangly earrings and like elbow length gloves because we're playing dress up and she'll put like blue sparkly eyeshadow on me. I think that's cute. I mean, my neighbors are probably like, "What's this guy doing?" But
I'm going to
yeah,
have to
that's
drop your Instagram so that everyone can see what that looks like. So you have to post some of that stuff.
I let her. I told her if she slept through the night one time that I'd let her paint my nails, and she remembered the next morning when I woke
Of
her up.
course you
So I let her
did.
paint my. Oh my gosh, it was the first thing she said. So I let her do it, and I don't know anything about nail painting or maintaining a pedicured foot. Yeah, that stuff doesn't come off, man, for a long time, especially the sparkly stuff. It's like cement, and it was on there for so long. I just forgot about it, and we went to the water park one day, and I took my shoes off. I was like, oh my gosh, my left foot is it's clear, sparkly nail polish, and the right foot was all pink. It's like whatever.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
But that's the stuff I hope she remembers that stuff though.
Well,
I
I
don't know what
think
her
that
friend.
that adds, right, to, dad's a very open-minded person. I can talk to him about some of those things. If
Yeah.
it ever needs to be, then she'll remember this. I think a lot of dads don't do stuff like this. They're very, I'm the stoic one, I'm the less emotional one, I'm the internalized toxic masculinity one, which not always, right? This isn't true in all situations, but can often produce a very don't talk to me atmosphere.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because my dad wasn't, it wasn't toxic masculinity by any means. He was just one of five from Pittsburgh. He's just, he was that kind of guy. Um, and this actually came up a few days ago. I had gotten mad at my daughter for some reason. All my anecdotes are about me getting mad at her. I hope that's not what people think. I think she's wonderful. But in this one particular example, we have a table runner on our dining room table, and she was
Wait, how fast do
sitting on
they
the ground
run?
pulling it.
No, just kidding. That was
Oh,
a dad joke.
I know it's what an appropriate spot for it. Um, and she was pulling it, and I was like, "Don't pull that because there's a flower vase on it." And she just yanked it. Flower vase came off, and it shattered everywhere. As get to your room. That was one of those like I wish I would have just thought about that a little bit more. But the next day, I made sure not to. I made sure to bring it up and not to just say like, whatever happened, happened. We're just gonna move on because I never got that as a kid, and I don't think that's a negative thing necessarily. But like my dad never would come up the next day and be like, "Yesterday was hard." Like you did something I didn't like. I reacted in a way I shouldn't have. Let's just squash it and we're starting over. That never happened. There was always an assumption that whatever the issue was resolved. But with her, I want to make it a point to not avoid that stuff and to say, like, look, dad raised his voice. I shouldn't have. I wish I would have done it differently. I wish you wouldn't have pulled the thing off the table like I asked you to. But what's done is done. Let's start over. And then we always hug. We move forward. That way, nothing is left up for assumption. And it's just, I don't know. I never had that. And I think that hopefully that's helpful to her.
That is something I've learned as well. Nick is very good at that. He's the one that got me started on doing that with my son, and I will admit that it was hard for me at first because it's like, okay, it happened yesterday. Why am I bringing this up again? Um, but I think that there is a lot to be said about readdressing something when you're calm and in a more educational mode as opposed to in the moment, like, oh, and everybody is upset about something. So I admire that. I think that's a fantastic
Yeah.
quality that you've discovered as a missing element from how you were raised and are kind of plugging it in now.
Yeah. It brings some finality to the conflict.
All right, Anthony, we have reached the end of our podcast. Again, I want to say thanks for spending some time with us. I think that there are a lot of topics that we can cover, so you might end up being a reoccurring guest on our podcast. But I value the perspective of a cisgender straight couple and the things that you and Sophia are doing with your kid and how similar they are to how we're raising our son. So it's kind of above any kind of gender or community standards or guidelines from either straight or LGBTQ, and certainly from a political how do you call it? Eco-social, yeah, all that stuff. So I appreciate you spending the time with us.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me on this. I think it's really cool. Again, I really respect you and Nick and your son and what you're doing here. I think is really cool. It was very interesting. And yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Always happy to help.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We will talk again on the next episode.
You could never find somebody do it like me. I'ma turn it all the way up, cause it kamikaze. Go ahead and try, baby, you are gonna see that you'll never ever find somebody do it like me.
And now back to the show.